In October 1984, lorry drivers found 34-year-old Günter Stoll gravely injured and unclothed inside his crashed car beside Germany's A45 motorway. Before dying, he reportedly spoke about 4 men. His wife said that hours earlier, he had written a baffling sequence of letters, YOGTZE. For 4 decades, the case was presented as one of Germany's strangest unsolved deaths. But in 2025, police announced a revelation that overturned nearly everything the public thought it knew. Was YOGTZE really a killer's clue, or did decades of repetition transform a tragic accident into a murder mystery? Günter Stoll was 34 years old and lived with his wife in Antshausen, in Germany's Siegen-Wittgenstein district. He had trained and worked as a food technologist but was unemployed at the time of his death. According to later reporting and police review, Stoll had been experiencing serious psychological difficulties. He reportedly suffered from depression and repeatedly told his wife that people were against him or intended to harm him. No publicly confirmed evidence established that anyone was actually following him. But to Stoll, the threat appeared real. On the evening of 25 October 1984, he sat at home appearing nervous and restless. Then, according to his wife's later statement, he suddenly exclaimed that something had occurred to him. He wrote a short combination of letters on paper. Depending on how the characters were interpreted, they became known as YOGTZE, sometimes written with an apostrophe, or with the letter G interpreted as the number 6. He reportedly crossed the writing out almost immediately. That brief moment would later dominate the entire case. But there was a critical problem. The original note did not survive. The famous YOGTZE note is often described online as though police recovered it from a crime scene. They did not. According to the later cold case review, Stoll's wife discarded the original because she initially did not consider it important. She later reproduced the letters from memory. That copy was also lost. Investigators therefore never possessed the original handwriting, the exact spacing, the original punctuation, or a document suitable for forensic examination. That distinction matters enormously. A remembered sequence is not the same as a preserved document. One letter may have been copied incorrectly. A symbol may have been mistaken for a number. Spaces may have been added or removed. The writing might have represented an abbreviation, a private thought, an unfinished calculation, or nothing meaningful at all. Nevertheless, investigators and the public tried to decode it for decades. Theories linked the letters to license plates, chemical compounds, geographic names, food products, military codes, and foreign languages. None was conclusively verified. The clue became famous because it could mean almost anything. That was also precisely why it could prove almost nothing. After leaving home, Stoll drove to a local pub. Witnesses later reported unusual behavior. At one point, he fell to the floor without an obvious external cause. He then left again. Later that night, he visited a woman he knew in Heigerseelbach. The visit occurred at an unexpected hour, and she did not invite him inside. Stoll reportedly spoke briefly before returning to his car. His movements after that encounter were uncertain. For years, this journey was interpreted as evidence that Stoll was attempting to warn someone or escape a danger. But those interpretations depended on a single assumption, that his fear reflected a real external threat. The new review considered another possibility entirely. His movements may have been shaped by a severe psychological crisis. If so, the apparent pursuit existed not on the roads behind him, but within his own perception of the night. During the early hours, 2 lorry drivers came upon a damaged Volkswagen near the Hagen Süd section of the A45. The vehicle had left the motorway and collided with trees or roadside obstacles. Inside, on the passenger side, They found Günter Stoll severely injured and without clothing. He was still alive. Reports from the original investigation said that Stoll spoke of 4 men who had been inside the vehicle. He died while being taken to hospital. The position of his body appeared deeply strange. Why was he on the passenger side if he had been driving? Why was he unclothed? Had several men attacked him elsewhere, run him over, and placed him inside his own car? That theory gained authority from the original medical interpretation, which suggested his injuries were consistent with being driven over before the crash. The investigation moved toward homicide, but decades later, new experts would revisit the same injuries and reach the opposite conclusion. Over the following decades, the YOGTZE case traveled through books, television programs, magazines, websites, podcasts, and online forums. Each retelling repeated a familiar collection of details: a frightened man, a coded message, 4 mysterious strangers, a naked victim, and an impossible crash. But repeated claims can slowly lose their original qualifications. The phrase "police considered" becomes "police proved." The phrase "a witness remembered" becomes "a note was recovered." Eventually, a theory begins to sound like a documented sequence of events. The 2024 Cold Case Review did not begin by trying to decode YOGTZE. It began by separating what the file actually proved from what decades of storytelling had added. Criminal investigator Mikey Schmidt of Hagen Police reorganized the evidence, reconstructed the route, and requested new expert examinations. The central question was no longer who murdered Günter Stoll. It was more fundamental. Did the available evidence prove that a murder had occurred at all? 2 new expert assessments re-examined the injuries and the mechanics of the crash. According to the authorities' 2025 conclusion, Stoll's injuries were compatible with the Volkswagen leaving the motorway and colliding with obstacles. They did not require him to have been run over by another vehicle. One of the case's most suspicious details was Stoll's position in the car. The new reconstruction offered a mechanical explanation. Authorities said that Stoll had not been wearing a seatbelt. When the vehicle left the motorway and collided with trees, the forces could have thrown him across the interior from the driver's position toward the passenger side. What once appeared to prove the presence of another driver could be explained by the crash itself. Investigators also found no foreign genetic material supporting the presence of 4 mysterious men inside the car. That absence does not mathematically prove no one else ever entered. But combined with the reconstructed crash, it weakened the homicide theory substantially. For decades, nearly every theory began with the same premise: Günter Stoll had been murdered. Once that premise was accepted, every unusual detail appeared to demand another person. His fear required pursuers. His position required another driver. His injuries required another vehicle. His words required 4 attackers. YOGTZE required a hidden code, but the new investigation tested the premise itself. When experts found that the crash could explain the injuries and body position, the elaborate murder reconstruction was no longer necessary. Investigator Mikey Schmidt concluded that YOGTZE probably meant nothing, that Stoll wrote it while in a disturbed mental state. The letters may have represented an unfinished thought, a private abbreviation, or a meaningless fragment. No conclusive evidence can now determine which. The mystery had not been solved by decoding YOGTZE. It was solved by asking whether YOGTZE ever needed decoding in the first place. In April 2025, Hagen police and prosecutors announced that new expert reports and reconstruction supported a self-caused traffic accident. They found no sufficient evidence that unknown attackers had been involved, and the case was formally closed. Some details remain unknown, including why Stoll removed his clothing and what he truly intended to write. But unanswered questions are not automatically evidence of murder. Sometimes the most responsible conclusion is not the most dramatic one. Sometimes the hidden truth is simply that the killer never existed. If this investigation made you think differently about how mysteries are built and remembered, subscribe to Mysterious Crime, like this video, share it with someone who loves documentaries, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation. Every mystery has a story.